you guys. We are now on chapter 8 of Annabelle. My lighting. A Ghostly Texas Tale by Shauna Kiefer and copyright Old Barn Press. So let's get going. Chapter 8 is called Valley of the Shadow. Don't see what it would hurt. No one says he's signing up for life. So Coach really called and asked for him? Jansen couldn't hide the pride in his words even through the phone. Wow, that's something. But Jansen, I keep thinking about Aiden. His knees and neck will give him trouble for the rest of his life, all because of a stupid game. Honey, this is high school. Might be just what he needs to make some friends, you know? Fit in? Kate hung up the phone and paced the floor, grumbling. Just like a guy. Probably sit in the stands and slap his buddies on the back while Rollins breaks his. She stopped and a slow smile spread over her face. Rollins, she breathed. After all, this was his decision as well, right? Never was football presented in such a negative light. Kate emphasized the grueling practices, even in the rain, and the smelly locker room, and the coaches with their whistles barking orders like Marine drill sergeants. And you know, your Uncle Aiden still has trouble with his back because of that accident in college. Rollins shrugged. Yeah. What's for dinner? So Kate ended the day satisfied Rollins wasn't interested in football. That was that. Mom, I'm staying for football. Can you pick me up around 6? But I thought you had decided not to. Yeah, well, can't hurt to give it a shot. So can you pick me up? Kate spluttered her agreement and hung up the phone, stunned. What could have happened to change his mind? She looked through the kitchen window toward Cal, who whistled as he toted an armload of crown molding up the stairs of the old house. Perhaps her finger needed a new bandage after all. Soon Kate stood once again by Cal's truck as he redressed her wound. So, Rollins is staying for football practice, Kate commented. Can't hurt to give it a shot, Cal mumbled around the first aid tape in his teeth. You talked to him, didn't you? Cal didn't miss a beat as he smoothed the tape around her finger. Yep. But Rollins had already decided he didn't want to. Can't know till he tries. You deliberately went around me. Cal ignored the accusation. What'd Jance say about it? Don't drag him into this. Kate had felt her face flush with anger as she yanked her hand away. He's the boy's father, Kate. You still had no right. And as his father, he realizes Rollins needs some sense knocked into him, and it's not going to happen around a protective mama bear. Don't call me that. Rollins needs this. If he doesn't get into a fight on the field, he's going to explode off it. And how many sons have you raised? Finally, a flash of anger in the laid-back manner as Cal slapped his work gloves on his thigh. Woman, you do beat all. Now, I understand you're Jansen's friend, and you're working here, but the hired hand ain't allowed an opinion. Kate's mouth hung open a second. That's not what... Look here. Cal took a step closer. I'm involved, whether you like it or not. I don't know what you got up your craw. That's your business. And I don't know what's eating Rollins, but just maybe I've got a clearer view and some common sense about what a boy needs to be a man. Kate looked up into Cal's too-near face, her fist clenched around the desire to slap it. His words had stirred up a well of poison that made her want to spit and cry and curse and break something, starting with that chauvinistic expression. But, damn, the tears. Why did she have to cry when she was angry? She hated women who used tears to control the opposite sex. Plus, it was too embarrassing, too female. She wheeled and just barely controlled the desire to run to the house, where she let the screen door slam and added the unsatisfying thud of the thin front door. Her gut was in knots and her head pounded with the phrases, clearer view and common sense. My craw, Kate grumbled as she slammed the clothes into the washer and slapped sheets into place on the beds. When Liam and Phoenix got off the bus after school, Kate fought the urge to hop in the car and spy on football practice. However, when her neighbor Ima showed up as if on cue and offered to stay with the young'uns, Kate headed out a bit early, relieved to discover other parents, mostly dads, leaning against the bleachers to watch the football drills. When the team dispersed, Coach Wills called, "Walden!" and Rollins trotted over to him, helmet in hand. The conversation was short, but to Kate, it seemed Rollins walked away from it minus his customary slouch. Then, rather than joining the rest of the team trotting toward the locker room, Rollins picked up his duffel bag on the sidelines and headed toward Kate. She knew communal showers were one aspect of teen camaraderie her son would avoid. On the drive home, Rollins actually offered information without prompting. I won the 40-yard dash. That's great. So did you like it? A lift of the eyebrows, a shrug, then he stared out the window. How Kate wished he would talk more, if nothing else to keep her safe from remembering why her son didn't like to shower away from home. When they pulled up in front of the house, Rollins grabbed his bag and bolted. Kate gripped the steering wheel and took a deep breath. She had to shove down the past and act normal for Ima and the kids. Kate choked on the memories and emotions throughout the rest of the evening. She had to admit Rollins was a bit more pleasant than usual, even going so far as to compliment their dinner of canned chili. But when all had settled in for the night, even Rollins, who took an extended shower and went to bed early, loneliness descended on Kate like a choking fog. The walls of the manufactured home leaned in until she felt her lungs would collapse with their weight. She burst out the front door in a claustrophobic panic and stood drinking in gulps of moist evening air, the night noises of wind and branches, frogs and crickets, singing an incongruent lullaby. As if on cue, the moon's glow appeared over the roof of the old house and grew, bit by bit, into a bright three-quarter sphere. Was it an optical trick that made some of the glow melt into a small shape on the third-floor balcony? Kate snorted. She didn't have time for imaginary fears. Reality was scary enough. She had never believed in ghosts, had always considered fascination with the paranormal a waste of time. So what if the rumors were true and there was some tortured soul wandering the halls of Pettigo Manor in the dead of night? Great. They would have a lot in common with her. Her feet crunched on the gravel as she drew closer to the silent, shadowed structure. Nothing would entice her to go inside. It wasn't fear of ghosts. She just couldn't stand the thought of being shut in with the beast of her past. Best to remain outside where she could see something larger, something unaffected by her personal hell. Thus, Kate skirted the porch and headed toward the side yard where Rollins and Cal had cleared a path. As soon as she knew none of the kids would see her, even if they looked out a window, the bitter memories pried open their vaults, and a rush of dread swept her body. It was 1.5 years ago. They might never have found out if Jansen's friend on the police force hadn't been investigating sexual predators on the internet. Jansen had called Kate into his office after the kids were in bed, his face ashen. I've got to show you something. There's no easy way. With that, he had pushed a button on his computer and the poorly lit image of a young man came to life on the screen. The kid was tall with dark hair. His back was to the camera as he stood to pee into a toilet. That's gross. Do we have to watch this? Kate said as she rose to leave. Wait. Something in Jansen's voice had sent a chill through Kate's body. The young man had turned toward the shower to undress. Kate's world had ground to a halt as bile rose in her throat. It was Rollins. But the beast in the closet wasn't finished. With a shudder, she relived what remained of that night, the one she thought at the time was as horrible as things could get. Rollins' expression when they had shown him the video was burned on her mind. The color had drained from his face and he had jumped to his feet to fumble for the button to freeze the image. What is this? Why is this on there? And when Kate and Jansen remained silent, he had stared at them, the horror in his eyes shattering Kate's world. You can't think I knew about this. The rest of that night and into the next day had been a journey through hell. Rollins had denied any knowledge of the video. Tears had flowed as he begged them to believe him. As to who was responsible, they hadn't thought hard for that one. The bathroom in the video was Alex's. Kate clenched her arms around her chest like a straitjacket and rocked back and forth in the moonlit garden as the events of the following afternoon poured over her, gasoline to the fire of her pain. Kate had opened the front door to Alex's dad, a once stunning man, now a bit soft around the edges, but always attired in nothing but the finest. I suppose you heard what happened, he had said without preamble. Yes, we were up most of the night with Rollins. What do you plan to do about it? He had leaned toward her a bit. We're not sure, because I thought it only fair you know we're considering pressing charges. You're considering pressing charges. Your son is completely out of control. My son? Assault? Death threats? What are you talking about? Your son attacked Alex. Fear exploded in Kate's stomach. Is he okay? Had that been a glint of triumph in the man's eyes? See for yourself. He had shoved a legal-sized envelope into her hand. Kate had pulled out the photographs and stared in horror at Alex's bloodied, bruised, and swollen face. Alex's dad had moved a bit closer, and his voice in Kate's ear had been calm and confident. I'm sure we don't want this situation to escalate into something ugly, especially for your boy. A mark on his record of assault with deadly intent would hardly put him on the path to success. His voice lowered further, taking on a curdling sweetness. As far as the internet thing, you just try to push that and my lawyers will come at you with guns blazing. The video will be presented as evidence. It'll be in the papers. Everyone will talk. Do you really want to do that to Rollins? Kate had looked up into what, for her, had become the eyes of the devil himself. Keep the photos, he had added as a parting shot. I've got more. Kate was alone in the darkness beside the hulking, moonlit form of Pettigo Manor. Give her ghosts any time. They were nothing compared to the monsters in her head. She didn't have to be a good example for the kids, didn't even have to maintain sanity for Jansen. A sob broke from her throat, and she sank to her knees in the grass, hidden from the light of the moon by the old house's shadow. This anger, no, she couldn't call it that. This was a beast devouring her insides. She was trapped, drowning, suffocating, and burning alive all at once as she relived that horrible night. Rollins' face had drained of color as he had stared at the photos of Alex. But I only hit him once, Rollins had insisted. He wasn't even bleeding. You admit you hit him, Jansen had stated. Was anyone else around? No, I went to his house. I didn't want to bring this up at school. Jansen had shut his eyes. No witnesses. Not good. But I didn't do that to him. You believe me, don't you? Rollins' frightened eyes had mirrored Kate's panic. Whether we do or not, she had struggled to keep her voice quiet, we can't prove anything. The evidence is on their side. His dad's in the movie business. Maybe it's special effects, makeup. Rollins had studied the photos again. Jansen had raked a hand through his hair as the lines in his face deepened. I'll discuss it with Tom. He referred to his police officer friend. Maybe he'll have some ideas. For now, stay away from Alex. His house, his parents, his email, they'd only use it against you. There had been a knock on their back door, so quiet they almost missed it. Kate had dreaded to answer, afraid it might be Alex's father. She had pushed aside the curtain that covered the panes of glass in the door. There had been Alex, his face even worse than the pictures had shown. This was no special effect and no act. The boy had indeed been beat up, and he was terrified. Kate snapped back to the present to discover her arms clutched her shoulders and her fingernails dug into her skin. She opened her eyes to the night sky, to the menacing old house whose shadow hovered over her, or was it extending a protective wing? All Kate knew was that the poison refused to be damned any longer. She hardly noticed, in the midst of her sobs, when Winston edged close and curled up by her side. There, flanked by an orphan dog and a derelict house, Kate wept like there was no tomorrow. Kate woke in a fetal position, the scent of earth in her nose and dry leaf bits in her hair. She was sore and confused, but peaceful. She sat up and Winston whimpered in his sleep. Perhaps he was the reason she didn't feel cold, even though a chill wind blew through the treetops. Fragments of a dream still flitted on the edge of her consciousness. Nothing concrete except for a hand stroking the hair from her face while a gentle voice said, "There, there." She wrapped her arms around her knees and tried to make sense of the fact she had just lost her grip, had leapt right off of that brink of no return, and had survived the fall. Perhaps this was the comfort of insanity. She nudged the memories and they leapt up, live coals longing to flare into a wildfire. Nope, she was still sane enough to keep the beast alive. But this peace, no matter how temporary, was too good. The hell of yesteryear would have to wait its turn. She glanced up toward the moon that bathed her in a soft glow. A good chunk of time must have passed for the light to have shifted so far. The moment. How long had it been since she had lived in the moment? Usually she was tormented by the past, dreading the future and enduring the present. Although nothing was fixed, and tomorrow promised more to make her cringe, Kate chose to sit on the ground with a sleeping dog at her side bathed in silvery moonlight and caressed by a soft, clean breeze, and breathe. That was chapter 8 of Annabelle, A Ghostly Texas Tale by yours truly. Next chapter is chapter 9, Roots of Prejudice. Stay tuned.